Hello friends, looking at current affairs for 3rd May. The news items picked up from the Hindu newspaper are these 12. We'll look at them in detail. The first one, Infosys plans to hire 10,000 Americans. So Infosys, which is India's second largest software company, which has a base in USA. So this has decided that it will open up 4 technology and innovation hubs across USA, and these will hire around 10,000 American workers over the next 2 years. So of course, this is in response to the present viewpoint which has been seen in emerging from USA that H-1B visa regulations have to be stronger so that jobs are available for Americans. So now Infosys is taking an initiative in this direction, offering jobs to Americans. So here you see that it will set up these hubs which will be based on cutting edge technologies like artificial intelligence, cloud computing, big data. Cloud computing we just saw yesterday, and this big data. Big data is data about data. So big data actually is the huge amount of data which is generated. So in present digital era, we see that information is all available in the databases, and the databases are so huge, but then useful information can be extracted from them. So even presently in an economic survey which was put forth in India, we had the big data application here. So what was done is on the railways bookings. One example is that in the railways bookings, how bookings are taking place, how tickets are booked in railways. So from that data, it was analyzed how migration is taking place in India. So that is application, how big data can be used. So this is what it will be focusing on. So this has been announced. You can see the H-1B visa minimum salary hike has been proposed. That is the salary hike, which means salary at which H-1B visa would be provided. So it's for high skilled workers that USA provides this H-1B visa. So presently the salary limit is, minimum salary as such is $60,000. So now it plans to increase it to $1,30,000. So this is a minimum salary hike which would take place. Of course, this is the annual salary. And also the number of H-1B visa applications this year have reduced over first time in 5 years, it says. So it happens by lottery system. H-1B visa are provided by USA by lottery system, and 85,000 visas are provided every year by it. So this you can see is how Infosys, TCS, Wipro have H-1B visas acquired. So here you see this blue is for Infosys, TCS and Wipro. So Infosys comes out to be the largest over the years too. So Infosys has announced this. Next is Karnan issues warrant against CJI 6 judges. So Justice C.S. Karnan, again we discussed him yesterday. So he had what we discussed was that medical examination on him was asked to be conducted. Of course, he has refused to undergo a medical test. Plus, he has issued a non-bailable arrest warrant against the Chief Justice of India and 6 Supreme Court judges. So the 7th judge bench, which is looking into his contempt of court proceedings, he has issued a non-bailable warrant against them that they are, they're telling that he's saying that these medical test orders are also a harassment order, and this is an insult to a Dalit judge like him. So this is the status now. Next is High Court grants ₹55 lakh to MiG-21 pilot injured in 2005 crash. So MiG-21, these aircrafts, there have been many crashes which have taken place. Even this was an issue in the movie Rang De Basanti 2. So these MiG-21 crashes have taken place. Actually, they have a high-speed landing, so that becomes difficult. And many pilots have undergone injuries and deaths have also occurred. So this is one of the pilots who crash landed in 2005, and he has had a debilitating injury. He has his back and spine affected, and that has resulted him being unfit for flying and even for day-to-day activities. He approached the court and he has asked for compensation, saying that he was unreasonably exposed to risks. So that is why he has asked for compensation, and the High Court of Delhi has provided compensation to him. 55 lakh compensation has been awarded, and the order's significance is that it says that this is violation of right to life, which is a fundamental right, because in right to work too, you have a right to work in a safe environment. So this is what the viewpoint is, and this compensation provided. Next is a festival of drums with a message. So this is regarding a festival in Kerala where it will be the largest traditional percussion ensemble of Kerala. So percussion are instruments, musical instruments in which the music comes through either by pulling a string or scraping or shaking or even the drums generally which we have. So these are called percussion instruments. So these percussion instruments will be used in this festival. So there is no specific name for this festival, but it will be held on the banks of river Bharatpuzha. So Bharatpuzha is the second longest river in Kerala after the Periyar river. So that is there. It's a west flowing river. Then the second is that at the 6-day crowd-funded event here, what we will have is various exponents of these various events, instruments will be performing. So these terminologies are important from culture perspective because in South Indian tradition, we have these terminologies coming up. Panchavadyam. What is Panchavadyam? It's an orchestra of 5 instruments. So it's a temple art form which evolved in Kerala. So it uses 4 percussion instruments and 1 is a wind instrument. So these are used. It has a pyramid-like rhythmic structure which constantly increases in tempo and the beats per cycle reduce. This is Panchavadyam. Thambayaka. Thambayaka is a solo chenda performance. So chenda is actually a cylindrical wooden drum. So this drum performance which is done. So here performance it's also evolved in Kerala. So there's a main player at the center and half a dozen other players play in the background. So this is the chenda which is played. So this is called Khayambaka. Then next is Mizavu. So Mizavu is also a drum played. So this is a big copper. Mizavu is actually a big copper drum which is played. So it's again a percussion instrument. Drums, tablas, all are percussion instruments. So here this is also famously used in Kudiyattam and Kuthu, which are performing arts of Kerala. So Kudiyattam is a form of Sanskrit theatre. It is the only surviving specimen of ancient Sanskrit theatre in the country. It has also been awarded or recognized as UNESCO Masterpiece of Oral and Intangible Heritage of Humanity. So this Kudiyattam is from Kerala. Even Kuthu, another performing art which is being spoken of, is also an informal dance structure which is there prevalent in South India, more so in Tamil Nadu. And this Kudiyattam is also found mentioned in various Sangam literature texts. So these are the South Indian texts or Sangam literature texts. If you have done history, you would be aware of it. And here actually Mizavu is being played by Ambalavasi Nambiar community. So traditionally that is the case, but now all communities are allowed to play this instrument. So these are the various terminologies here. The next is Modi expresses concern at Australia visa policy. So in Australian Prime Minister actually Malcolm Turnbull was on a visit to India, and just after he finished his visit, when he went back to Australia, he announced scrapping of 457 visa policy. So how H-1B visa has been regulated in USA, same way this visa policy was scrapped. So the new visa policy now in Australia, the tenure here for visas will be reduced. Earlier it was 4 years, now it has become 2 years. Also the visa fee has been hiked. Also after this announcement by Australia, India stated that this action of Australia is going to impact the trade pact being negotiated. So that was the case. The next news item is no invasion of body for UID, says government. So this is the case which has been heard in the Supreme Court on Aadhaar, and here the government through the Attorney General of India is claiming that impressions of the iris and the fingerprints which are taken for Aadhaar, this is not invasion of the body. So it also says that the right of a person to his or her body is not absolute. So it says that the government can extinguish a person's life too, can take away a person's life too. But then the Supreme Court judges intervened and stated the state can take away the life of an individual, but that is only after following the due process of law. So that is what is being looked into, whether this is justified or not. The case is actually on the section 139 AA, which was inserted into the Income Tax Act, which is making Aadhaar mandatory for filing income tax returns and for acquiring PAN cards. So that is the case being heard, and now the Supreme Court is going to hear arguments and give its judgment. So presently the case is still going on, and as the arguments are taking place, hearings are taking place, we are coming across the developments. So here it says that to live in a collective state called state, one has to submit to the laws of the state, and this is the law made. So what the Supreme Court is looking at is that whether this law is following due process and is justified or not. So, of course, the government has stated this linkage of Aadhaar to PAN is for tackling black money. So there are multiple PANs, duplicate PANs being issued also. Also there are cases of duplicate Aadhars being issued, which has also been put forth by the petitioner, that Aadhaar is also duplicated then. But what the petitioners claim is that taking so much information from the people, this will give the government surveillance powers. It can have surveillance over the entire lives of the individuals. If everything is linked to Aadhaar, the bank accounts are linked, the income tax returns, everything is linked. On a click, you can get all the details of a person, of an individual, of a citizen, and this can be used for mass surveillance. So this is the fear which is being put forth by the petitioner as such, and the case is being heard. Next is new IT rules to beef up Aadhaar. So to address the privacy and security concerns over Aadhaar, now central government has also initiated that first of all, government agencies have to be educated that this is sensitive data and should not be made public. Also, people need to be educated that Aadhaar information and such data, bank account data, etc., should not be revealed. So this education as such to both government agencies as well as public is important, and the government is going to address this privacy and security concerns. The government continues to claim that Aadhaar is secure. So as for technology, it is having secure technology. There is no concern as such there. But then the IT Act as such would be amended to strengthen data protection and security. And they are more so emphasizing on people being educated about data security. So you can see there are close to 135 million Aadhaar numbers. So this and 100 million bank account numbers that could have leaked from the official portals dealing with government programs of pensions and rural employment. So this has come up in a report as such by a private agency. So this shows that leakage of such information takes place. So if leakage takes place, then this has huge implications, because then Aadhaar is used to authenticate and authorize transactions. If Aadhaar information is leaked, it can have a huge financial risk as well. So that is here. Next is Hamas accepts pre-1967 border. So Hamas and Fatah, these are two major political parties of Palestine, and they are in control of two regions. Hamas is present in Gaza Strip and Fatah on West Bank region. So here what is the case is Fatah is a moderate party. It has accepted Israel's right to existence, and it is working towards a two-nation theory to bring in a solution to this crisis of the two nations existing peacefully. And Hamas has always claimed that Israel has no right to exist, and it was calling for destruction of Israel as such. Now it has softened its stance. A document which has come forth now, it has accepted the pre-1967 armistice line. So indirectly it has accepted right to existence for Israel as well. So presently the US President Donald Trump and Fatah party leader Mahmoud Abbas are having a meeting. So in this backdrop, we have seen Hamas has also come up with this document in which it has revised its stance. So this is there. It also, the document states that we are struggling not against the Jews because of their religion, but because it is an occupier. We are struggling against Israel and occupier. So this again a shift of stance, because it's generally accused of racism and anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish stand also. So this is the timeline of events. You can go through them of Israel, how Israel and Palestine conflict has developed over the time. And this is the loss of land as such too. So when Jews started settling in here, this is the ancient land. Jerusalem is the religious holy site, not just for Muslims, for Christians as well as for Jews. So all three, the prophets of each, Prophet Muhammad for Muslims, Prophet Jesus Christ, and also Prophet for Jews, Prophet Moses. So all three have their base here, and even as such in Muslims, they believe in the other two prophets also. Prophet Jesus Christ and Prophet Moses are revered by Muslims as well. So this is the status. Here you can see that it was occupied by Palestinians, but it's an ancient site belonging to all three communities. So that is why when we saw Hitler policies against Jews, they started settling in, pouring in this region, their ancient land, and Jewish land was formed here gradually. You can see 1947, this was the status. 1967, again the war which took place, and after that the Palestinian land was restricted to this region, and this is the present status. So the land, this you can see, this is the Gaza Strip where Hamas is in power, and this is the West Bank region where Fatah party rules. And now Israeli settlements, which have also come in news quite often, they are settling down in this region too. So the region under Palestinians is further getting shrunk. So this is the 1949 armistice line to the pre-1967 line. So this is what has to be accepted, and that has been done by the Hamas party presently. So this remaining part is Israel. So this is a practical way out now. The next news item is startup firms may get idle land from PSUs. So now Heavy Industries Ministry has put up a proposal that since PSUs are being disinvested, the idle land which would come forth can be used by startup companies. So these will be sold off at market prices through an SPV. So special purpose vehicle would be formed. So an example is also given of Scooters India Limited. So this is a loss-making PSU. It has land asset of 147 crores, of which 147 acres, of which 125 acres are unutilized. So this is in Kanpur Lucknow highway region here. So these can be put up for available for the startup companies, because the major problem is generally in land acquisition. So an SPV would be formed which will provide the necessary infrastructure, industrial infrastructure here in this region, and then it can be provided to startups. So this is a proposal put forth. Next is India to unveil new IIP series. So this index of industrial production, which we discussed yesterday, if you remember, we did 8 core sectors with respect to this. So now the government has announced that a new series of index of industrial production will be brought forth. The base year will also change from 2004-05 to 2011-12. So we'll see once it comes. So here the industrial activities on a monthly basis are given, as we saw yesterday, which was given for the month of March. So this change in base year also will bring in more accuracy. So that is, it is compared to which year. So now base year has changed to 2011-12. So better comparison will also come forth. The numbers will be more accurate. Next is skill councils have conflict of interest. So this is actually regarding the Sharda Prasad Committee, which was constituted by the Skill Development and Entrepreneurship Ministry to review, rationalize and optimize the functioning of sectoral skill councils. So there are around 40 sectoral skill councils which have been established. So in various sectors, skill councils which will provide training, skilling to various people here for making them job ready. So these skill councils come under the aegis of NSDC. So they are being overseen by NSDC, National Skill Development Corporation. And NSDC is a non-banking finance company, and it is registered as such, and it is public-private partnership, means public sector funding is provided and private sector entities are members here. And they are overseeing the skill councils. So the Sharda Prasad Committee has claimed that these are hotbeds of crony capitalism. Crony capitalism means the government and the businesses come together and they function for their own private interests. So this is what is being, the government policies are as such. So the Sharda Prasad Committee is saying that NSDC and the sectoral skill councils, here they have extracted maximum benefit from public funds. Examples are also given here, you can see. So a board member of NSDC is also a training partner and a promoter of a skill council. Right, and then the son of the chairman of the sectoral skill council is a co-promoter of a training firm, as well as an assessment agency that oversees the outcomes achieved. So this is the overseeing agency too. So of all other firms in such a domain, to overseeing is done by this authority only. So they can use this for their own personal benefits. So that is being highlighted, the conflict of interest as such. So that is why the Sharda Prasad Committee has suggested that this NSDC should have a complete overhaul and its structuring should be changed. There should be an oversight mechanism on NSDC and its functioning. So this is the case here. NSDC is 100% government funded, but it is accountable to a board consisting of majority of private sector industry associations. So the two basic objectives of this policy were to provide skills needed for the industry and to provide employment to the youth. So the connectivity here, but then it is being misused. So here you can see NSDC. It's under a PPP under Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, and it provides funding to build scalable for-profit vocational training initiatives. So its mandate is to enable a support system such as quality assurance is ensured, information systems, train the trainer academies, so directly or through partnerships also. This is what it sought to achieve. Then the next news item is the last one. Eclectic FPI mix drives Indian equities. So FPIs, foreign portfolio investors, which are registered with SEBI, presently we are seeing that they have diversified to a huge extent. We are getting FPIs even from Trinidad and Tobago, Cook Islands, etc. So there are almost 60 different countries from where FPIs, foreign portfolio investors, have been registered with SEBI. There are around 8,000 registered FPIs in India. The maximum come from USA. There are around 2,700 from USA. Fourth is Mauritius now. So earlier Mauritius had the maximum number of FPIs registered because of the treaty which we had, double taxation avoidance agreement which we had with Mauritius, in which no FPI from Mauritius was taxed in India. They were not required to pay taxes. But now we have revised our DTA agreement with Mauritius, and now FPIs are taxed. So this is the status now. USA leads the pack. Otherwise, the FPIs were routed through Mauritius. So from other countries, they would go to Mauritius and then come to India so that they don't have to pay taxes. And also the FPIs in India have increased because there are higher returns in India than other emerging market as such. And even Sensex, you can see from the last 17 years since 2000, Sensex has ended with losses only on 5 occasions. Otherwise, it has registered profits. So here is the data regarding this too. You can see. So the countries and the FPIs registered are shown here, and FPI inflows as such shown. So that is it. Thank you.